Hi everyone, I'm Dom Griffin, I'm a film critic and you're watching The Armchair Auteur. This is an ongoing video series I do where we talk about new movies, old movies, screenplay analysis, TV show reviews, that sort of thing. So if you like movies and you like movie adjacent popular culture and you like to see somebody pick those things apart, please consider subscribing. Today, I'm reviewing Space Jam: A New Legacy, the long-awaited sequel to Space Jam, a movie that came out when I was 10. It hits theaters this Friday and it'll also be on HBO Max at the same time, and we're gonna talk about it, which is good because we have a lot to talk about. Look, I liked the first Space Jam quite a bit, but I hadn't seen it in like years, like literal years before the sequel came out. And because it's like a standalone sequel, I didn't think I really needed to watch the movie because there's not gonna be like plot, connective tissue or anything like that. But I did feel like I needed to see it again just to like calibrate my mind properly. Which is to say, I didn't want my nostalgic feelings for the original film to color this new movie because those feelings aren't real. They just exist in my memory. So before I went to a screening tonight, I rewatched the original film this afternoon. It's a fun movie that came out when I was a child and features all my favorite Looney Tunes and a couple of dope songs, so yes, it's still fun to me. Even if I can now thankfully admit it is nowhere near as good as I remembered it. I can see why I liked it so much when I was 10, but upon rewatch, so many weird little things stick out to me. Like how Matthew McConaughey's performance in Tropic Thunder owes so much to Wayne Knight's here, how if space aliens really did steal the essence from several NBA players today, they wouldn't suspend the season, and in fact would just make them play in a bubble, and that it wouldn't take Tweety Bird's love and fandom to convince Michael Jordan to play the Monstars, he'd have just done it on general principle.
It became personal with me.
It's a basic-ass movie that merges the paradigm for Who Framed Roger Rabbit with the well-worn structure of a sports movie, and at 88 minutes, it tells a complete story about a man falling back in love with one of his passions. So when I saw initial trailers and scuttlebutt around the standalone sequel with its Ready Player One-esque IP bait and needlessly complex setup, I was a little worried. On paper, this should be an easy layup. LeBron James is far less of a sociopath than Michael Jordan and genuinely has a lot of charisma and comedic timing as we've seen in his few acting stints. So like at the very least, it should have a better lead central performance. At the very least, it should be a little bit more likable than the first. But I'd already seen some negative reviews and some not so positive word of mouth, so I was a little bit concerned. But having seen the film, I'm happy to report it's not bad. It's just also not very good, but it's not bad. In this one, the story centers around LeBron James as a more serious and stern version of himself and his fractured relationship with his fictional son Dom, who doesn't want to follow in his dad's footsteps as a baller because he would rather design video games.
But I don't want your life.
But LeBron turns down an offer from the film's main villain, Al G. Rhythm, a literal algorithm played by Don Cheadle, don't ask, who kidnaps Dom and challenges LeBron to a basketball game for his son's life. Trapped inside the Warner Brothers serververse, basically all of WB's IP trapped inside a more expensive version of the world from Reboot, he has to search every other fictional thing the studio owns for people to play with, and this being a Space Jam sequel, he settles for the Looney Tunes. So before I get into what is going to be kind of like a nitpicky, whiny critique of the movie, I do want to start with some positive things first. The central conflict between LeBron and his son is good shit, and it's genuinely heartfelt, touching on LeBron's youth in a way that feels meaningful and earnest. It also allows for the film's actual best performer to have some great drama moments to go alongside everything else he does, because Don Cheadle was literally hired to play a fucking algorithm in a cartoon movie and delivers work better than anyone else on that Falcon and Winter Soldier show he somehow just got an Emmy nod from. Cheadle is a dynamo here, having a real blast with a really dumb part in a movie that doesn't make a ton of sense, and just like chewing up all the scenery. He's funny, he's charming, he's a little scary at times, he's unsettling, he's weird, like it's really incredible. No one would have expected anyone to do this much with this part. He creates this really weird and toxic relationship with LeBron's son in the movie that gives off like kind of really serious Emperor Palpatine vibes.
Did you ever hear the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise?
And like maybe a little bit of like Dustin Hoffman and Hook.
Jack. You are home.
And look, there are some fun gags. The music is pretty good. It's a pretty movie. It looks really nice. It's very colorful, like the palette they create. What else is good? It's a largely fun movie. Okay, like I had a good time watching it. There's some good stuff in it. It's I guess about what you could expect from like a Space Jam sequel. It's not like change the world or whatever. But there are just so many things about it that don't fully work that just like irked me. Not that I expected it to be way better or that it could be way better, but it just felt kind of like, look, it's not the concept that bothers me, right? Like, it's not that they like shift the general concept of what a Space Jam movie is. It's the execution of that shift. We almost got several different Space Jam sequels over the last 20 years. Like, we almost had one with Tony Hawk. We almost had one with like Jackie Chan. We almost had one with like Tiger Woods. Like, the general concept of like sport plus famous athlete plus Looney Tunes, like you could have done that every other year for several years before we got tired of it, most likely. I think people would have definitely showed up for several other Space Jam movies over the years. But they didn't do that. They kind of waited until LeBron ended up wanting to do it, and then we almost got a version directed by Terrence Nance, who's like a very, very talented guy, who you may know from the film An Oversimplification of Her Beauty, which is like a really beautiful movie. He had to drop out of the movie for like creative differences or whatever. They got Malcolm D. Lee, who's like semi-talented. He's like decent enough. And this movie's definitely better than like the other black filmmaker helmed animated movie that HBO Max put out this year. It's definitely better than Tom and Jerry. I'll say that right out of the bat. But it just doesn't fully work for me. First off, the entire concept of the serververse, like the WB IP-verse that gets used in the movie, and LeBron having to go on this crazy journey to like put together this best basketball team, theoretically using people like Superman or the Iron Giant or whatever, that would be fun if the movie was going in a direction where he would end up having a basketball team comprised of a bunch of other famous characters. Like, if like Pennywise was actually on the team. Like if the Joker had to play point guard or something. Like that would be like interesting and like funny. But it's not that. It's LeBron and the Looney Tunes playing basketball, like for sure. No twists here. That's what you get in the movie. But instead you get this huge chunk of the movie that goes through all of the different WB movies that they reference, and there's just all these, again, Ready Player One-esque references to other Warner Brothers movies, and none of them are like references that would matter to young people. Like, there's a bit involving The Matrix that is probably designed to remind people that The Matrix exists because there's a fourth one coming out, but the whole time I felt like I was watching an MTV award show from my youth, you know? Like, LeBron James is only a month older than me. We're like the same age pretty much, so like, maybe they were just trying to pull from stuff that like related to like his childhood and the childhood of many of the people who were kids when Space Jam came out. But the result is just tons and tons of gags relating to Warner Brothers things that don't really feel playful enough to be warranted. There's one pretty good bit with Wile E. Coyote in Mad Max Fury Road. Like I fucked with that super hard, totally popped. But there's just other stuff where you're like, Casablanca? Like who is this for? Warner Brothers used to be, I think, very good at doing this sort of like tongue-in-cheek reference meta stuff, like Tiny Toons, like Animaniacs. They did a great job of like referencing all the things Warner Brothers owns, but in a fun way, like in a playful way, not in like a Disney way. And so much of this movie feels like something Disney would do, only not as well as they would do it. And that just irked me on some level. Also, the villain of the movie is an algorithm that Warner Brothers uses to create all of their decisions for the business, which is something that WWE does all the time. Like, they very often make like Vince McMahon and the people that run the company the villains in their fictional storylines. And it's like, why do you want me to boo against the people I'm giving money to? Like, why can't I just boo someone else? And this movie is somehow 30 minutes longer than the original Space Jam, but a lot of the like granular fun stuff that makes Space Jam still special to this day, like the way they incorporated other NBA players into like the villains and stuff, they do that same gimmick here, but it's like glossed over really quickly. And it's like, I feel like Space Jam worked because, yes, Michael Jordan was the star, but it was also tapping into the zeitgeist of what players were popular in the NBA at that time. And this movie doesn't do that like at all. Like, it really glosses over a lot of different like textural detail stuff, which is weird because the movie has even more room to play with those things and just chooses not to. Instead, there's just tons and tons of gags and bits that like don't really land the way they should. Like, I didn't laugh anywhere near as much as I was hoping to. Bugs Bunny is not quite as funny as he usually is. Daffy, my favorite tune, like the actual best tune as far as I'm concerned, heavily underutilized. And I just don't understand why. There's probably going to be more people getting into heavy discourse about this movie who are sports journalists than there are movie critics, because it's going to be interesting to see how people weave this movie and the story in the movie and the story surrounding the movie into their ongoing, never-ending LeBron James discourse and what the movie's creative choices say about his legacy and his career and stuff like that. I'm not smart enough about that stuff to like comment on that, you know what I mean? Like, you're not going to see me like arguing about that, but I feel like that is going to be a big thing once this movie hits like the mainstream, like probably gonna make a Ringer podcast about it or whatever. But the one thing that stuck with me the most that kind of bothered me was going in, the one thing I was looking forward to was LeBron's performance. I think LeBron's a really funny guy, like generational talent at basketball and all that stuff, but like, you know, you watch him in that Judd Apatow movie that's not great, and him and John Cena are the funniest people in the whole thing. And, you know, it just seemed kind of a disappointment that he just plays this weird, like, not even real version of himself, rather than just kind of playing himself. Like, Michael Jordan, not a great actor, he was just kind of generally feeding into the image of him that the popular culture had, you know what I mean, at the time, rather than, like, the more sort of, like, arch villain that we sort of know him to be from that documentary. And here, LeBron is, like, not doing that. He's, like, doing this weird artifice thing, and I'm like, why would you even bother at this point? Like, I feel like it could have been so much more fun if he was a little bit more fun, if there was a little more levity to, like, his actual part. Because by the time his character starts actually having fun, it's just too cringy to enjoy. It's just really uncomfortable, and not like in a cutesy, like, dad joke kind of way, in a way where it feels like he's actively pretending to be less charming than he is. And I don't know what the point of that is at all. So yeah, Space Jam: A New Legacy, it's fun, I think. Like, if you have kids, take them to the theater to see it. Like, it's a good time. It's 2 hours you can kill with them. I think they'll enjoy it. Maybe when we were leaving our screening, I definitely saw a kid like a little surprised that the movie had so much 3D animation, not 2D animation, which just proves that young children are smarter than the studios think they are, and that you could have just made it straight 2D animation the whole time and they would not have complained whatsoever. But honestly, I have to give it a soft recommendation because I enjoyed it. And even if I enjoy a movie that lots of other people think sucks, I will recommend it. Like, if I had a good time, I'll say maybe you'll have a good time. But I will add the caveat that you should probably just watch it on HBO Max. I would not leave the house for this movie. I did because it's like my job, but you probably shouldn't and don't have to because it's going to be on HBO Max. You can just watch it at home. Just do that. Those are my thoughts about Space Jam. It's not quite as bad as some of the people are already saying, but it's also not great, but fun. I can't ignore the fact that something is fun. If something is fun and I have a good time, I have to acknowledge that. I had a good time. It was fun. I will watch Daffy Duck in anything. Even if he only has like a minute and a half of screen time, I'll watch it because Daffy's my boy. So see it for Daffy, if nothing else. And Don Cheadle. Don Cheadle's crazy good in this. It's criminal how good he is in a movie this goofy and nonsensical. So Don Cheadle's the GOAT. We love him. Thank you all for watching. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you have any thoughts about Space Jam, basketball, Don Cheadle, do so in the comments below. I'd love to talk to you guys. It's always one of my favorite things to do in my week. And if you have not subscribed, subscribe. Hit the little bell icon to get notifications when I put out new videos, which will be a bit more very soon. Thank you all again for watching. I will see you all in the next video.